All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Happy Wife School show. As always, it's so good to be here. I missed you guys last weekend. I was away visiting my parents near Louisville, Kentucky. So it's good to be back today. Let me know in the chat that you can hear me, that I'm coming through okay. And the sun and how the sun shines in my office is a little different this time of year. So there's this like ray of sun right here that I'm trying to stay back and not hit, because every once in a while it gets in my face. So hopefully I have success with that today. A couple of reminders before we get started. Please go check out my colleague Josie's YouTube channel, Escape the Alternative Health Matrix. She is incredible in helping people to overcome chronic illness and autoimmune disease. Josie herself had 8 different autoimmune disorders I guess that was probably about 10 years ago, because that's when I met her, and I told her you need to go work with my mentors. And she is fully healthy now for 8 years. So that's what she does and what she talks about, and has a really interesting perspective and groundbreaking perspective on how to heal and how to be healthy. So please go check out her channel. If you enjoy watching or listening to the Saturday live shows in podcast format, because you maybe don't enjoy the beginning parts where I'm giving these reminders or chatting at the end and answering some questions, please go check out the Happy Wife School podcast on Spotify or Apple, or even on the YouTube channel under the podcast tab. And you can find the episodes there and even share them if you would like to share through that format. So I'm going to take a quick peek over here just to make sure you guys can hear me. Thanks, Phil, coming through loud and clear. Awesome. Hi, Memphis BBQ. Hope you're doing well. Salty's here today. So nice to have you. Thanks to Steve and Phil holding down the fort in the chats, being incredible moderators. My words aren't coming out right. And Evo is not able to be here today, but he should be back soon. And with all that being said, I'll take a look at the chat at the end. Phil's going to send me some questions. We'll go ahead and get started. So today we are doing a Q&A. So I found a few questions from the comment section, and also a question from someone that sent it in to me. So we are looking at today 3 examples of why sex fails in marriage. Last time I did a Q&A, I answered questions from women around the issues and challenges of sex in a marriage. Today, I'm looking at questions from men and their challenges with their wives around sex that I thought were interesting questions. The reason that I separate them, I talked about this when I was planning for today's show. The reason that I separate them is because the questions are so different. The questions that women have around sex and the issues around sex in their marriage are very, very different than the questions that good men ask in the comments or send to me. So that's going to be a big theme of today's show, is really highlighting how different we are as women and men, so we can learn to understand each other the best we can and have what I talk about, the dance in marriage. That the dance does not come from being completely on the same page and thinking and relating to each other in the same ways and having the same priorities and things that are important to us in a marriage. That's fantasy land. What I'm here to help women and good men with is to be grounded in our differences and understanding them, so that we can have an acceptance and tolerance of each other and work together in a marriage, given the differences that we have. I think it's very difficult, even though that is such a duh statement, that men and women are different, and we all know that. But I think it's really difficult for us to let in just how different we are from each other, to be okay with that and find that dance of acceptance and tolerance with each other in those differences. So that's going to be a big theme today as I go through these 3 different questions and my responses to them. Just as I did with the last Q&A, it's important to know in answering these questions, I haven't talked to these men. I haven't talked to their wives or their spouse. So I'm answering the questions based on the principles of the Happy Wife School channel, and using these questions as a teaching opportunity to help us understand each other and our differences. It's an opportunity for us to learn from each other on common everyday issues in marriage. And one of the most common everyday issues in marriage that we struggle with is sex. So that's why I'm looking at these questions that give us just talking points. So before I get into the first question, I think it's important to set up part of how we are so different is that as women in general, we view the issues in our marriages through our emotional state. And a woman's internal emotional state, when we are unhappy, meaning having an unhealthy relationship with ourselves and being disconnected from ourselves, our internal emotional state is one of feeling really badly about ourselves, whether we want to recognize that and admit that or not, or stuff it down and put a smile on and just pretend everything is great, or just totally wear that outwardly of how miserable we are. We are on a spectrum of how we operate in that internal emotional state. But we feel really badly on the inside, and that is created through not having a relationship with ourselves, taking shortcuts in our lives, making choices that are out of integrity with ourselves, and living in camp victim. As women, we live in camp victim, and we put all the power and control of our experience outside of us into the hands of others and circumstances. Mainly our husbands are our punching bag and main target of why we are so unhappy in ourselves. And when we live in camp victim, having given all of our power away, we have no capability to change and move forward. So we make the same choices. We operate in the same behaviors over and over and over again, and we feel really bad about ourselves on the inside. The consequence of that, or one of the many consequences of that, is that creates the lens through which we see our husbands and our marriages. That emotional state of which we see our husbands and our marriages is a delusional reality. It is a delusional reality because we filter the actions and behaviors and how we see our husbands through that emotional state of feeling bad about ourselves and then blaming you for why we are so unhappy, which creates a totally distorted reality of what's happening in the marriage. That is why so many of the problems go unsolved and the issues can't get solved, because as women living in that delusional emotional state, we can't see the reality. We can't see any role or part that we have in the issues and problems. It is all on our husbands, and we can't see our own behaviors, how we're showing up in the marriage, and how that impacts our husbands, the marriage, and how they interact and respond to us. We're totally blind to it, living in camp victim. There's no self-awareness. Whereas the difference in good men is that good men are pragmatic. They're problem solvers. They don't approach the problems in the marriage or problems in life through this hyperactive emotional state of feeling badly about themselves internally. That's why it can be so difficult for a good man to understand what's happening for us as a woman, because internally, because you are wired so differently. You look at things through a logical, pragmatic lens, even in difficult challenges. And as women, we are simply not wired that way, just as good men are simply not wired to approach life and problems through their emotional state and living in that delusion. So men being pragmatic and problem solvers are much more focused in regards to the issues in the marriage, are much more focused on the facts and the true reality of the relationship versus the delusion we live in as women, thinking our husbands are the problem. Sadly, the delusion that good men can get sucked into and are blind is buying into and believing the gaslighting and emasculation and manipulation from their wives, that they are the problem and that there's something that they can do or stop doing that will fix the issues and challenges. And so good men get caught in the trap of, until they get sick and tired and throw their hands up and say, I'm not doing this anymore, get stuck in the trap of doing the things they think will make their wife happy. And the goalpost keeps moving from their wives, and they're lost in a confusion of, I don't understand what else to do. I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. That's where good men can be stuck. But if you left it up to men in the marriage of like, how would you solve this problem? In general, good men have a very pragmatic, reasonable, fair solution that would work if us as women could get out of our way in our emotional state, see the reality, and follow our husband's lead. But as women, again, we live in camp victim as opposed to camp take responsibility. So we don't want solutions to the problem. We want to have the blame on our husbands for the issues, because then we don't have to look at ourselves. We don't have to see our own shortcomings and how we're contributing to the problems, and actually take accountability and have to make some changes. Men in general live in camp take responsibility. It's one of the first things that a man says to me when I get on a call for a consultation or to meet to give some perspective and guidance. One of the first things a good man will say to me, like 99% of the time, is, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I know I've contributed to part of the problem in my marriage. I don't want to make my wife bad and wrong, and I don't blame her or judge her for the issues. It's one of the first things good men say to me, because in general, they live in camp take responsibility. And they're not in the delusion of blaming their wives and being stuck in that emotional chaos and drama that we create as women. Whereas a lot of times, if I get on the call with a woman who hasn't taken the red pill from me yet and is still stuck in camp victim, she wants to focus on what she feels her husband is doing wrong. And what her husband needs to change. And she might say things like, I know I do X, Y, and Z, but he does this. And if he just stopped doing this, then I would change X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't be this way, because we're so entrenched in camp victim. So that's the psychology and the differences between men and women in a relationship. And one of the biggest problems and challenges, like I said a few minutes ago, that we have in marriage between each other is sex. And we could not be wired more differently than we already are around sex. It's just, it is a totally different wiring that we have from each other. You know, a good man will get married, and part of that getting married is we get to have sex. Like I'm married to the woman I love, who I want to spend the rest of my life with, and we're going to have sex, and hopefully consistent sex. And he's living thinking that is going to be the case. And as women, we've had sex for all the wrong reasons. So we get married And then we turn that switch off, as I've talked about before, and we disengage from sex and put our walls up around sex and think, I got what I wanted. I got the marriage. I'm getting the family. I've got the security. So we stop having sex. And then a good man is left dumbfounded and confused of, why would she stop having sex with me? What did I do? What changed? What happened? And it's just how different we are. So I'm going to start getting into the questions now to look at the differences between us and give some understanding and some solutions. The first question that I am going to answer today came from the video I did in the live show I did, and then I think I made some clips from it on affection and how important affection is to a good man in a marriage, yet how as women we shut down any affection because we are terrified it's going to lead to sex, and we have shut down so much to sex. So the question is, why are women terrified of sex? Can you please do a video explaining the quote unquote, I'm afraid it will lead to sex, or wives are terrified of sex? I just need this fear and horror explained in a way I can comprehend. What is it that women are so afraid of? So thank you for this question. Again, I haven't talked to this person. I don't know the ins and outs of what he's experiencing in his marriage or has experienced in marriage, and answering this in the framework of the principles of the channel. The angle I would like to take with this, and there were a few I could have taken, but the one I thought was probably the most common and hopefully the easiest to comprehend and understand for good men to the best of your ability. Because again, you want to remember, in our differences and our issues as women around sex being very emotional and coming from an emotional place, and good men being pragmatic and practical and logical, you can understand what I'm going to be sharing with you, but it won't make sense to you and your wiring because this isn't part of your wiring. So it's trying to understand through the lens of how we operate as women. The reason as women we are, and once we get married, mainly, that we are so terrified of sex is that we have a deep, deep need to be in control. So stay with me. I got to set a little bit up around this, and then we'll get into how does this tie into being so terrified of sex. But we have a deep need to be in control as women and keep ourselves and our lives like this. Just a straight line, nothing rocking the boat, nothing upsetting the status quo, nothing that's going to make us feel anything emotionally that makes us feel out of control. So we grip tight and become very rigid and control freaks to keep our lives like this straight line, nothing rocking the boat, so we never have to feel not in control or even further out of control. We panic when something outside of the tight bubble and comfort zone we've created. We panic when something disturbs that bubble and is going to make us feel something that we are not in control of. We really do kind of, sex is always an interesting topic to use this analogy, and I don't mean it to be crude when I say this, but as married women and as we get older, we really do get a stick up our butts. Like how rigid and controlling we become, and you can see it on our faces. You can see it in our actions. I had a man tell me recently that he'll get up to go to the bathroom, and maybe him and his wife are watching a movie on the couch, and he gets up and maybe he had the throw pillow out of place and something else out of place, and he comes back from the bathroom and the pillow's back in place and the other things back in place, and like his wife can't stand to have anything out of its place. And I know many of the men listening can relate to that, and hopefully the women listening can be honest about that in ourselves as well. We really do. We become so rigid as we get older, as we're married. We just, our unhappiness in ourselves. We have a very, very, very tight grip on ourselves in life, again, to not have to feel anything that's going to make us feel not in control. So how does this relate to sex and how we become so terrified of sex as married women? Sex is something that has the potential to make us feel out of control, or feel something outside of that tight bubble we've created to protect ourselves. As women, we all know that we've lost ourselves in sex, whether that was at the beginning of our relationship with our husbands when we were dating, or men prior, bad boys, that we have lost ourselves in sex. And we are terrified we will lose control of the experience of ourselves. Again, we're very different. A man's like, woohoo, yeah, let's get lost in the fun of sex. Like, what's wrong with that? That sounds exciting. As women, it's like, like, just like butt clenches up, like, nope, don't make me feel anything outside of my control. That the raw basic nature of sex becomes terrifying to us as married women and as we get older. And it's terrifying because if you get into it, if you get into that raw basic nature of sex, and we loosen up, then we are terrified of the potential of where it could lead. And this is something I have to work on in myself. I can get into a comfort zone with sex in my marriage, and then it's like switching it up. I have to feel that rigidity, and it's fascinating. And I have to understand that in myself as a woman so I can catch it, take the stick out, and continue to overcome that rigidity and need for control. So for the women listening, we can't make this bad and wrong in ourselves. It's an understanding of ourselves, and that's where good men want to have it. Good men want to understand the best they can. They don't want to be victims, but they can understand. As women, we have to understand ourselves so that we can overcome these behaviors, because if we deny them and push them away, we can't do anything about it. So the raw basic nature of sex and the potential of where it could lead puts us out of control. And we can think of things like our hair getting messed up, exploring different new things with our husbands, or, letting it get outside the norm of what we're used to. Weird sounds can happen. I won't go into much more than that. Unflattering positions. I know this for myself. This one I can get very self-conscious about. Like, is that roll showing, or what do I look? Like, I don't know what that looks like. Wouldn't want to see that in a mirror. And so as women, we spend so much time in our lives and so much energy trying to have it all put together in that facade that we create, that we're so self-conscious to show our imperfections and be outside that tight bubble. And sex is going to break us out of that if we open up to it and we let loose. So at a fundamental level, we're terrified of sex because it exposes us and it pushes us up against our rigidity and our controlling nature. And some of you are listening and thinking, but Karen, she wasn't like this before we got married. She was fun and spontaneous in the bedroom and let her hair down, or, unfortunately, some of you, your wives maybe left and left you for a bad boy. Like, well, she didn't have to stick up with, I know some people like say, with Chad. But a bad boy has that ability, and his manipulation and the the charisma and his wiring that's very different from a good man, and we're desperate to fill that emptiness and that unhappiness in us, that unfortunately we will let our hair down in that way. But ladies, we can learn to let our hair down with our husbands too and have some fun. And we're going to talk a little bit more of that in the next question. So those of you thinking she wasn't like this before marriage, you want to go watch 10 things your wife will stop doing when you get married. That's under the video tab, and it has a thumbnail of about bait and switch. That is, women were bait and switch brides, because before getting married, we want to be the fun girl. So we do the things in sex to make it exciting to get you. And then we get what we want, and then the switch goes off. You can go watch Why Women Want Sex, the real story, to learn more about that switch. And we get married, the switch goes off, and the theater that we use to get you all goes away. So the other part of it all, in our rigidity and our control, is, and I'll just briefly touch on this, is we deny ourselves anything that we might enjoy or find pleasure in, like sex. Because one, as I was mentioning earlier, we feel really bad about ourselves internally, so we don't feel we deserve pleasure or enjoyment. And two, if we opened up and enjoyed sex with our husbands, and we did actually enjoy it and let ourselves feel pleasure, and we actually felt good, it would destroy our victim story against our husbands in our marriage of how we blame them for our unhappiness. And we can't let that victim story get destroyed, because then we'd have to look at ourselves and what it is about us that we are so unhappy. So again, bless you, good men. You don't have this baggage around sex. For you, it's simple. It's fun. It's something very nice and intimate that you get to share with one person, and it's important to you. And as women, we have wrapped sex into our emotional delusion, made it really complicated and a big deal, and we're wired differently in this way. It's not as important to us in a marriage in general. So for men, I've said this many times, in general, it's going to be in their top 3 of what's most important to them in a marriage. For women, it might not even make our top 10 of what's important to us in a marriage. So we totally miss each other. So women, listen. In the solution, in answering this question, it's part of the responsibility you took on when you made the choice to get married. We all knew we were marrying men, and that men enjoy sex, and they're still going to want sex after getting married. We all knew that. We all knew what we signed up for. So stop it. Stop making it a big deal. Remember that you enjoy sex and step into it. I have a lot of videos around sex to help you gain a new perspective and overcome your issues with sex. And if it's part of your responsibility, you might as well learn to enjoy it and open up to it and stop being so controlling and rigid, and come along on that journey with me, because you're not alone. And for men, the solution, you have to realize whatever amount of sex you're having, not having, if your wife's terrified of sex, not terrified of sex, whatever the situation is, you married a woman. So we're going to have these issues on a spectrum, and some of you are very fortunate that these issues are very low on the spectrum. Some of you are in very difficult situations where it's very high on the spectrum of these issues. But you have to know you married a woman, and then you have to be clear on your values of what's most important to you, so you can make a choice about your marriage and the woman you are married to, and then take responsibility, whatever that choice is, so that you don't end up in camp victim either, because it's a miserable place to be, whether you are a woman or a man. So that's the first question. I like these Q&As. I like this format. This is fun. I'm very excited about this next question. It's some fun things to explore here. There's been a hot topic on different platforms around duty sex. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So the next question is, what about hormones and menopause? What if your wife genuinely says she's not interested in sex anymore? Or I'm sorry, let me repeat that. What about hormones and menopause? What if your wife genuinely says she's just not as interested in sex anymore, but still wants to have occasional sex? Like every 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Knowing this has turned me off, even if there is truth to it. How can I be motivated or aroused when the other half is doing it out of obligation? So we are going to look at this in the lens of this popular topic going around of duty sex. Before we get there, I want to give women just a little reminder about the hormones and the menopause. Ladies, as you hear me say this, you're going to be triggered and hear it through the trigger. I'm not saying that menopause and hormones aren't a thing. It's real. However, good men need to know that hormones and menopause is just another excuse we use as women because we're not interested in having sex and have shut down to it. Good men don't know any better because they don't have this experience of hormones and menopause and the way we have it as women, and all the stories you are fed about it from women in society. So good men buy this excuse. It's the perfect excuse that you're not even allowed to question. God help you if you question this and call this out in your marriage and don't accept this excuse from your wife. We use hormones and things like menopause or perimenopause or PMS because we feel entitled to be bitchy and mean and have excuses to not have sex. And that is the perfect excuse we can put in our back pocket to pull out anytime we need it. And that's why as women, we have to know that sex and having sex is just a choice that we can learn to just make. We're going to talk about that more here in a moment, but it's a convenient excuse. Hormones, menopause, things like that have become a convenient excuse that has been handed to us by society, medicine, doctors. We're so enabled in it. And good men need to know, nope, we're just not interested. And that gives us the perfect excuse. And we can know this because how many married women have had affairs or left their husbands for a bad boy who are of the age of menopause or perimenopause? Guarantee you they're having no problem having sex and their hormones are not getting in the way. It's an excuse we know we can use that will not be questioned. So with all that being said, let's talk about this question and this husband being turned off that his wife isn't as interested in sex anymore, but still wants to have occasional sex. And he feels she's doing it out of obligation. In general, every married woman, if she's upholding her vows and responsibilities as a wife, is having sex out of duty or obligation, and not in a negative sense of the words. It is a duty that we have as wives. And the truth and reality is in our wiring as women, men, you need to listen to this. You need to hear this and understand this the best you can. Is that as women, we are not always in the mood. And there's nothing you can do to get us in the mood. That's something that we have to do ourselves. And I saw a post this week from a woman, I think her name is Gia McCool. I might be mispronouncing that, but she had a great post about duty sex and highlighting the point, we're not always in the mood. Yet a woman in integrity and in character with her responsibilities as a wife will still have sex, even if she's not in the mood, because she knows it's her responsibility. And in this post, this woman highlighted, it's just like men aren't always in the mood to listen or provide emotional support or do a house project or go shopping with us. But if it's not too far gone, a good man still does those things because he sees it as his duty and responsibility. It's the same for us as women. If we're living in integrity and character of our vows, we will have sex. And that's where I want women to know that we can learn, might as well learn to enjoy it if we're not always in the mood, but knowing it's our responsibility. So have some truth for the man, bless you, for who asked this question. Again, not knowing his situation or the ins and outs, just what he shared. But the man who asked this question should count his lucky stars that he has a wife, and apparently a wife that's a little bit older if she's experiencing menopause, that still wants to have sex, even every 2 or 3 weeks. You should feel very blessed and very lucky. It is a fantasy world. I'm not saying this man believes this, but knowing this is the thought pattern that can happen for some men, is it's a fantasy world to believe things like a woman should always be in the mood, or to believe things that a woman will always want to have sex on demand and just be there and just right there with you, or even want to have sex, things like multiple times a week. We're different in our wiring. So this man wants to be thankful that in spite of his wife's hormones and menopause, she still wants to have sex every 2 to 3 weeks. Most men watching this channel would be overjoyed and just a dream come true if their wives still wanted to have sex and have sex that often, every 2 to 3 weeks. So you want to be thankful for what you have instead of looking at this as a cup half empty. And in this particular instance, this man is being a victim. And if this is your attitude, it's going to make things a lot worse. You want to be thankful and appreciative that she still wants to have sex, even if it's every 2 to 3 weeks. And then maybe if you're appreciative and thankful, maybe she will want it more. But you want to grow up and stop living in a fantasy. Read the comments on my videos from other men and realize how fortunate you are. A lot of men on this channel are dealing with sexless marriages. I've talked with men who, still breaks my heart to say this. I talk with men who haven't had sex with their wife since their wedding night. And they've been married 30, 40, 50 years. And because of their faith and their beliefs, they won't leave because they're committed and dedicated in their vows and in their faith. So there's many men on this channel watching these videos who are suffering from extreme sexless marriages, men who get sex once a year, maybe a few times a year. So if your wife's willing to have it a couple times a month, you want to be grateful for that, because it could be so much worse. Most men are dealing with women saying, I'd be fine if I never had sex again. So if you're married to a woman who realizes that sex is her responsibility as a wife, and it is her duty to have sex with her husband, and fulfills that duty even when she's not in the mood, that's a high value woman. That duty sex is a higher principle, that a woman knows it's her responsibility to her husband and her marriage and herself as a wife. And from that place is not the same. Duty sex is not the same as doing it as a chore or a dreaded obligation or a burden. It's a higher principle that shows character, accountability, and integrity. And she's stepping into her role as a wife. You're not getting something less than. It's just understanding and accepting in that dance. We really, really are wired differently. It's kind of like, I was trying to think of an example earlier. And what I came up with was that, when there's a song that you just touches you and just hits you right in the heart, right in the soul. And it might be like a popular band or group, and it's like maybe one of their more obscure songs, and you just think it's the best. And you just like, God, this is such a good song. And you play it for someone else or other people, and they might be like, oh yeah, all right. And they do not have the same experience. You're never going to get them to have like a song that really touches you, that you really love. You're never going to be able to get another person to love it and hear it and have it hit your soul the way it does for you. That is how it is that sex is so important and something you just so fully enjoy for what it is. And most women can't and will never enjoy it on that level, but that we can come to enjoy it and still step up and fulfill our responsibility in it and have a good attitude and be in integrity and accountability around that. And if that is you and you're married to a woman, but she's not always in the mood, or she's not always just like eager and excited and just, loving it, but she's there and she's present and she's doing the best she can and she's fulfilling that role, you want to realize how fortunate you are in that, and really embrace that and not be a victim that you think it should be something else. And for the women that realize it is a responsibility and a duty, you want to know you can learn to enjoy it, and don't just do it as duty sex. Like, no, it's your responsibility, but learn to enjoy it. Like, if we're going to have it, we might as well have fun and enjoy it and know that we're wired and with all the right parts to enjoy it. So we want to give ourselves that gift. All right. The last question, and 3 examples that sex fails in marriage, which really boils down to how different we are. The third question: if marital sex is all about trust, connection, and respect from the woman's perspective, how is it that a married woman can cut off sex with her husband, the father of their children, and then enter into an affair with a married man? So my heart goes out to this man, and that it's clear this is what he's experiencing. And it's a very difficult situation to be in. So in answering the question, this is the story we tell the world, that for us as women, sex is about trust, connection, and respect. That's a story. And it's a lie that good men don't know any better. And sex is a tool we use to get what we want as women. And we will abandon our responsibilities, abandon our marriage, the man we say we love the most, and go run off with someone who has no connection or respect for us, and there's no trust there. So that's just a story. It's just a story that's what sex is all about from a woman's perspective. The reason we cut off sex is because we marry for the wrong reasons. We cut off sex because we got married to be taken care of, and the unrealistic expectation that our husbands are supposed to make us happy. When men can't live up to our ridiculous expectations, standards, and the ever-moving goalposts of our demands, we cut off sex as a punishment and withholding from you because of the hurt we feel you are doing to us and our emotional delusion that we're so unhappy, and thinking you're the cause of our unhappiness when you're not. This is another example of how a good man can't understand a woman and our wiring internally in this, because a good man would never, ever do this in his marriage to his wife, and would never have that level of cruelty and mean-spiritedness just randomly to his wife. It's a shocking disbelief for a good man to grasp how selfish, cruel, and mean-spirited we can be as women. So all we focus on in the marriage is what we think you're doing wrong, that we believe is making us unhappy. So the trust, respect, and connection is gone. We killed it. We brutally murdered it with our woman ways and how we show up in our manipulative, emasculating, and gaslighting behaviors to make you feel that you are the problem. And then the hurt and the blame we have towards you for our miserableness. We can't see our own role and our own choices and our own behaviors that are making us unhappy. From that place, some married women will then have an affair because they feel you've let them down. They feel entitled and are extremely selfish to go find someone to fill that emptiness and make us happy, which they won't be able to do it either. You want to watch Why Married Women Cheat under the live tab on the channel to get more in-depth perspective to this. But some women will find a married man to have an affair with because he's miserable, often because of what his wife has done to him and her emasculation. And the woman that's after him is in her facade. So he thinks she's wonderful. And how could her husband treat her so poorly? She's so wonderful. And then they have an affair. And so many men, and even outside this context of what we're talking about in an affair, have fallen for their wives' stories of how awful her ex-boyfriends were, how awful her ex-husband was, and don't even question it. It's a story. It's a story. So the emotional connection that a married woman and a married man make from their own being miserable in their marriages is that emotional connection is a fantasy world. It's not based in reality. It's based in this fantasy of coming together and having something new and being able to relate to each other and how sad and lonely or unhappy they are in their marriages, and create a whole other false relationship that isn't going to have a strong foundation and won't work. Again, we're wired different. Men make a vow, make a commitment, and mean it. As women, we say our vows, but they're empty words. There's no commitment behind it. We don't even realize what we're saying or that we're even making a commitment. We haven't thought about the long haul of a marriage. We've just thought about the wedding day or what we want out of marriage, but don't think of what we have to do to actually make the marriage work and make it good, or what we need to do for ourselves to be happy in ourselves. And because then there's no commitment behind those vows, we can't see how our choices, such as having an affair, married man or not, affect and impact our kids, our husbands, other people. There's just no awareness of that because we feel entitled to what we want that we think will make us happy. So the solution here, women, you've got to learn to be happy in yourself, to feel good about who you are. You need to grow up and get out of the fantasy land that your husband is supposed to make you happy, and that there's some other man out there that will make you happy. No, wherever you go, there you will be. It's you. So working on yourself to build a relationship with yourself and to be happy. For men, you have to know if you're a good man, you're not the reason or the problem that your wife cut off sex and then had an affair. You married a woman, she's unhappy in herself, and she feels entitled to leave and go find what she thinks will make her happy. And please don't fall for the trap of an affair with a woman, and especially a married woman. She's in her facade. It's not going to be better. The grass is not greener. Her true colors are going to come out eventually. You won't feel good about yourself because it's against your character and integrity as a good man. And then it becomes ammo of further ammo of how you're the problem and ruin the marriage. It doesn't end well. You want to take responsibility that you married a woman, grow and learn from the challenges and the heartbreak and what happens and whoever you're married to in the spectrum she's on in these woman ways. Again, you need to know your values of your priorities and what's important to you so you can make a choice about the marriage and whether you want to stay or go. You can go watch Should I Get a Divorce, a decision-making model for good men under my live tab to learn more about understanding and being grounded in your values. And you want to take responsibility for whatever choice you make so that you don't end up an angry, bitter, jaded man living in camp victim. We have to take the challenges of marriage, the challenges of life, the challenges of the differences between us, and grow and learn from them so we are not victims. So that's the Q&A today. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this format. I really like doing the Q&As from time to time and answering questions that you might have. If you're interested in my courses for women and men, you can find the link in the description below to apply. I teach women first in my happiness course how to have a healthy relationship with themselves, because that's the foundation we must have to start to work on our behaviors in our woman ways in our marriage, which that's what my second course for women addresses. The happiness program is a prerequisite to that second program, the Happy Wife program. And then my men's course teaches men how to rebuild and regain their strength and confidence in themselves so that they can navigate their wife's woman ways in a constructive, healthy way without giving their power away, and learn to heal and overcome the emasculation. And from that, you have clarity. Through that process of the course, you gain clarity on what outcome is most likely for your marriage, so you can take responsibility for whatever choice you make. And in that, you're also fighting for your marriage to see, will your wife step up and follow your lead as you make those changes in yourself? So again, you can find the link in the description to apply. Please make sure you like this video if you haven't already. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not subscribed. And I'm going to take a second to go through the chat, and Phil's going to send me some questions here in a moment. So we'll see what's there to answer. And before I do any of that, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. All right. Let's see. All right. Hi, Luke. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the backup you gave me in the comments the other day in the video I put out. I appreciated that so much. You guys do such a great job sticking up for me in the comments. I love it. Always see that and appreciate it. So I'm going to come over here. Gosh, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for your contributions today. My CRX Joe, thank you so much. Yeah, my fiance never shows interest, but never denies me. The problem is she doesn't show interest. Yeah, so that's where you want to know. I don't know the specifics of your relationship, but to know she doesn't deny you. And that means she's in some level stepping up to the responsibilities she knows that she has, and something you want to consider if she's your fiance. You want to consider how might things change once you get married, and consider if that's the direction that you want to go. Vince Johnson, thank you so much for your contribution. And Phil, thank you so much for your generosity. You are welcome for the book recommendation, The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands. It is a great read, and one that was, what's the word? Just essential to my red pilling as a woman. That was my mentor, and how he has helped me. That is probably the biggest red pill. And then coupled with reading The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, I read that book, my jaw dropped to the floor, and I couldn't deny any of it. It was just so in my face. So, and then it's great for good men to read because it validates that you're not crazy. She does a good job of sharing examples and stories from other men. So it's a great tool. And then also to know what's reasonable of what you should expect in a marriage. Not that you will necessarily get it, but how you should be treated in a respectful, kind way, so that you know how you are being treated. If you're a good man and you're showing up, that it's not, you don't deserve how you're being treated. So it's just a great book. Vince, thank you for your question. I'm so sorry you're experiencing that. I need to know what are my first steps to rebuild myself as she's moving her stuff out. My heart goes out to you. And there's other men in the comments that have been experiencing that as well. So I know they're there and understand what you're going through in that. But your first steps, I would go watch the video when your wife leaves you under the live tab. I give some really good direction there. And then the best thing you can do for yourself is having that education to know what went wrong in the dynamics between you and as a good man and your wife as a woman, and undo the gaslighting that you were the problem, and to see where you gave your power away, and being grounded and knowing yourself as a good man. That's for any man going through this experience. And if you're a good man, that's the first step that you have to start from. And then, go watch the live of what to do when your wife leaves, and bless you. Like I said, my heart goes out to you in that situation. All right. I am going to go over and see questions that Phil has sent. Thank you, Phil. It's always so weird when I pop up my browser. I can see me on the live stream on YouTube, but there's a delay. And so it always looks so weird because that's not the movement I'm making. All right, let's see. All right. Oh, great. Thank you for your comment, Chris Seeger. Thanks for all your information. It has helped me out in dealing with my girlfriend. Well, you are very, very welcome. Carl Philip Bickmeyer, thank you for your comment. Hi, Karen. Love your show. It's changed my life. Thank you very much. And greetings from Germany. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words. Phil, thanks so much. A woman always loves when that's noticed, so I appreciate that. Phil said, I normally avoid personal observations, but it looks like Karen's lost some weight. I have lost a little weight, so thank you. It's a journey of mine here in this life. I think I've shared before, I was born 11 pounds. So it's a journey for sure. So I appreciate you noticing. Thank you very much. I feel, thank you, Liberty. I feel sick to my stomach. I have 5 small kids and contemplating going to see a divorce lawyer. Every month and a half, I have to remind my wife that I exist. 0 affection toward me, 0 sex. Again, my heart goes out to you. It's not an easy situation to be in, but hopefully the channel, in a good sense of the word, doesn't make it any easier or take away from the significance of your experience, but you're in a very common situation. So normalizing to know this is how a lot of marriages turn out, so that you can approach it pragmatically and heal from it and grow and learn from it, is really, really, really important. And slowing down to know what your values are, so you can make a conscious choice about whether you want to stay or leave, and knowing your values and what's important to you, so that you can live and can't take responsibility. Again, I highly recommend going and watching the live video on Should I Get a Divorce, a Decision Model for Good Men. That's something you want to go check out. All right. Oh, Interesting question. How much of a woman's need for control stems from the fact that they are generally smaller, weaker than men? My perspective is that has, and nothing against anyone that has that perspective, but that's not the truth of my experience. My need for control, the women I've worked with, talked with over the years, our need for control doesn't stem from that. It stems from being in camp victim, having given our power and control away to other people, circumstances, our past, for our experience in lives, which renders us powerless. So we become very scared of life because we have no control within ourselves. We've given it all away through our perspective of living in camp victim and blaming. When we live in camp victim and we blame women or men, but we're talking about women here and our need for control, we get terrified of life and being taken advantage of or something being done to us, and we feel no sense of ability to be in control of our experience of life because we are not naturally wired to take responsibility and haven't learned to take responsibility. I work with women of all sizes and strength. and I think of one student that I worked with for a bit. She's little, but she's a powerhouse and has really learned to live and can't take responsibility, and has grown so much, and she's not scared of anybody. I know that. So interesting perspective. Thank you for the question. Why is sex about fun and not love? Great question, and thank you for that. My perspective is, and my experience, especially as a woman, and I see this all around in terms of our humanness, but we've put a lot of weight and meaning into sex that isn't what sex is about. When I made, as a woman, and sex being very, making sex very emotional and an emotional experience, especially, back in the day, sex, to me, I made it all about love, and sex all about a relationship and something I desperately wanted. So we put a lot of emotional meaning into sex that isn't what sex is about. When we make it about love, or this emotional experience, especially as women, that's where we make it this really big deal, which then our walls go sky high. For me, a imperative part of starting to heal with sex was popping the bubble, and just seeing it for what it was, sex, and something really nice and intimate that I get to share with one person in the world, my husband, but allowing it to be fun again and not putting all this undue emotional meaning onto it, and just seeing it as sex, a pleasurable experience that we get to enjoy in marriage and have that. And it does create an intimacy and a connection. But when I make it about intimacy and connection or love, that's where I cut myself off at the knees and shut down to it. And I think we could all serve to just see it as something fun we get to enjoy together. And in that, in a marriage, can create an intimacy, but not making it about love. And that's my perspective. That's been very, very helpful to me. Oh, good for you. Bless you, Adam. Adam says, Adam Cervinka, I'm not a good man, but I'm trying. Bless you. That's probably a good man if you're saying I'm not a good man, but I'm trying. This is, my wife values me very highly. She doesn't deny me sex. Lucky, 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 blessed man. And that's why I'm trying even harder. There's a lot of wisdom on your videos. Thank you. Good for you. I can promise you A good man always wants to do better, sees his mistakes, and wants to try and improve. So you might spend some time seeing how you might know yourself as a good man. Good man doesn't mean perfect, doesn't mean you haven't made mistakes, doesn't mean you haven't strayed from your character and integrity, but that you see your mistakes, you see the errors in your ways, and you want to improve and do better, and show up for yourself the best you can in your life. Ugh, yeah, that's really tough and a good question. Thanks, Peter. Missed you last week. Missed you guys too. How exactly does a man cope with the humiliation of a woman mentioning the name of another man moments before he fulfill her needs? Yeah, that's emasculation. So you want to see it for what it is, and that she is trying to humiliate you, so that you see it for what it is and don't allow it to. You don't want to end up in camp victim. You want to recognize this is a woman, and that is her trying to weaken me. And then from there, you, and not in the moment, because that won't go well, but you then want to have a tough conversation of, hey, this came up. I want to talk about it, and how that caused me to feel and how we can solve it. And she probably won't meet you there and want to have that conversation, but that's how you take a stand for yourself. So you do not allow it to be that little torpedo in your brain that then kind of blows up and has that emotional effect on you. That's within a man's ability to learn to not have it happen by understanding the reality of women and understanding those woman ways to the best of your ability. Thanks, Blue Boy D. Thanks, Karen. Love to see a woman smile like you. So rare these days. Well, thank you so much for that kind comment. I appreciate that. All right, guys. I can feel my voice is getting a little tired, so I'm gonna wrap up here. Thank you guys in the chat, and all that you contribute, and oh my goodness, there's so much going on there. Whoa. Yeah, whenever I pull up the chat, you guys know this, I say this all the time. It just like goes and goes and goes. So, thank you all so much for just contributing in the chat, keeping it respectful, hopefully making Steve and Phil's job easy, not making them have to bounce too much. And yeah, oh, thank you, Cesar. Glad to see that you're alive. Thank you for all you do. Greetings from Brazil. Thanks for joining me. So cool. Everyone around the world. Very, very fun. So thank you guys so much. What I'm trying to say is just thank you for being an awesome audience and giving me the platform to be able to share my message and reach women and good men that I'm here to reach and support us to have healthy marriages from a different perspective and angle than what we've been taught, and learning to have that dance. I look forward to seeing you again next weekend. Stay safe out there and see you soon. All right. Bye.